Hey guys, Dan Lotz here, coming to you with the top 5 biggest mistakes new filmmakers make during editing. I really like editing. It's one of the most parts of filmmaking that I'm most passionate about. And I really wanted to make a video talking about my theories on editing and where I think a lot of new filmmakers go wrong and how I can help them. And hopefully you guys, if you are new to editing, can learn a few little small tips on how to become a better editor and how to make your projects a little bit tighter or maybe slower depending on the project, and how these specific ideas can really affect how your film comes out in the end. So my very first point is the improper use of transitions. I think new filmmakers really get this wrong, and this is something that I know I definitely made mistakes when I was younger, which is overusing transitions like fades or any weird, unusual transition shots, specifically fades like fade to black, fade to white, or crossfading. Maybe if you're like George Lucas doing like the weird wipes, those definitely work for Star Wars, but they're very much a particular sort of feel. And I think a lot of young filmmakers, they want to seem flashy and that they really know what they're doing. And a lot of times you'll see them use all these transitions. And I think these are really good and effective transitions. In my feature film Sheep Theater, I used more crossfades and wipes and all these different types of transitions than I had ever used before because I had a specific purpose that I wanted the film to convey with these different shots. And I think it's more about how you film these scenes first. I think a lot of people get into it and they want to do a crossfade between one shot and another shot, and it just doesn't work because they didn't film with it in mind. But if you have, let's say, a crossfade, the only way it's going to really work is if one shot is almost completely blank and the other shot is, let's say, a character is in the shot, and then you fade over, and then you sort of the background becomes part of the foreground. That looks a lot more consistent than, let's say, having a shot where one character is standing in a frame and then another character is standing in the same frame and then they crossfade. It usually looks really bad. So I think you have to be very particular about how you use transitions if you really want to be consistent and have a quality to your edit. I think hard cuts are usually better for beginners because it just teaches you the very basics of editing. And, don't rule out using transitions if you need them for a specific scene, but I think you have to be very careful to not get too crazy in editing and doing all these fancy transitions when all you really need to do is the cut tool. The second point is using J and L cuts, basically having the audio fade in from the previous clip or into the next clip. So basically you'll have a scene where one character is talking, and then instead of just cutting to the next scene, you have the audio from the first clip fade into the next clip.
It's got a wife, as you can see on the next one. Kind of a looker, man. Don't want to hit that after. I mean, you do the deed and all. I get it.
Or fade in from the previous clip. This is just the most crucial way to get audio to sound consistent between two different takes.
Well, I've been thinking it over. I was thinking about giving you the address after all of them, but
there's nothing worse than cutting on a certain line of dialogue and then the next cut completely changes the tone of how the actor was delivering the performance. So J and L cuts is just one way you can really get into making the audio and the acting performances more consistent by bleeding that audio in from the past or in the next clip. I think that's really an interesting way to tackle that, and I think it's one of the key ways you can bring your audience more into a story is using J and L cuts. So I definitely would suggest you doing it, and make sure to look up videos on how to do it properly so that it looks and works the best possible. My third point is killing your babies. This is a phrase I think every filmmaker has probably heard, but I think it's something we all need to talk about again. And that is basically you need to learn how to destroy certain parts of your film. You need to be able to say, okay, this just doesn't work. I know a lot of people are very precious, myself included, about things we shoot, but you need to be able to see in a long timeline, if there's a 90-minute edit, you need to be able to say, I need to cut 15 minutes from this in order to make this a 75-minute film or an 85-minute film. You need to be able to kill your babies. That's why it's the phrase, you have to be willing to take what's precious to you and to cut it up. So I think as a filmmaker, the older and the more mature you get in terms of editing, the more you're willing to start cutting and reducing, because you can see where the hard work meets just a bad idea. Sometimes you have a really, really good work ethic on set that you really are like, oh, I love this scene. We put like 9 hours into it. But then you get to it and you're like, this just doesn't work. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes you just have to kill your babies. So I would definitely recommend you going through any edit and seeing if there are any scenes that you shot that you don't think really fit the tone or fit the scene or the film in as a whole. So just look through those scenes, and then I think you'll be able to find something that probably doesn't work, and then you should be able to cut that, and that will always make your edit, I think, better. You have to be willing to kill your babies. The fourth point is about consistency between scene flow and the flow of the entire project. So many people, when they're making, especially longer form projects, don't always consider these two things in a different light. When I like to edit, I like to cut a specific scene and try to get the pacing of that scene as good and as fast and as efficient as possible. And then when I've gotten that scene cut, I go on to the next scene until I'm finished. And then once I've edited, let's say 40 or 50 or 60 scenes, put them all in together, then I look at a full project and I say, okay, let's watch it. And we watch the whole film, and it usually is terrible. As Scorsese would say, if you don't feel physically ill after your first cut, you're doing something wrong. And usually it's because the whole flow of the whole project is just off, because you've done so much to micro tweak the small scenes, but you haven't worked on making the big stuff. And I think a lot of inexperienced editors try to worry more about the scene-to-scene flow rather than the whole consistency. And this kind of goes back to my previous point, which is about killing your babies. You need to be able to kill your babies to get that scene-to-scene flow and as a whole project to work. When I was doing my feature film, Chlorine, it was literally like a 95-minute film when I first put it in the edit, and it just didn't work. And I cut the film down to 85 minutes, cutting off 10 minutes because I wanted to make sure that each scene felt like it was necessary and the pacing was consistent throughout. So I think you really need to think about the consistency of your project in order for it to turn out good. The final point is getting advice from others. I'm notoriously bad about this one, so I'm going to throw my own name in this hat. Basically, you need to be able to listen to advice from other people in order to get your edits to be a little bit more sharper. I learned this when I had one of my films go to a little festival in Missouri, and basically we had a bunch of people really harshly critique our film, Chlorine. And basically, that film, we didn't do too much tweaks, but we had a little bit of micro tweaking here and there that I do think affected the pace of the film overall. So I think there is a lot of advice and knowledge you can get from bringing in other people, like friends and family, or other filmmakers. Showing off your work before you actually premiere it is a very good way to refine and improve that. For my feature film, Sheep Theater, which I just dropped, I didn't really have a lot of advice from other people except for my wife. I wanted to have someone that was very personal to me, who was willing to give me just the raw, real truth of what was going on. And there was many scenes in terms of the edit where she gave me little tweaks here and there throughout the film, and that really helped the pacing and the general feel of the film. So just be very, very willing to work with other people and get their advice, because there are so many times when you get the advice of someone else who will open up your mind to a new idea of how to cut your film. So thank you guys so much for checking out my video on the 5 mistakes that editors make when they are new in making feature films or short films. I really, really appreciate it, and I have released a feature film called Sheep Theater, which is out right now free on YouTube. You can check it out right here. But then also, I have some new videos out on my YouTube channel. You can also check those out, or you can subscribe. So thank you so much, and have a great day.